Masechet Sukkah, daf 54. I'm going to go back to the Mishnah to review. We're going to need our calculators today. The entire daf is going to be about calculating how many blasts of the trumpets occur on different days. We saw the minimum and maximum. We're going to look for some other cases that also equal the maximum, even though the Mishnah gives one example. Why that example? There's other cases. We're going to look for days where you might have actually even more than 48 blasts. And so if I just say that the maximum is 48, there's some days that's going to be even more. Okay, so we're going to have to calculate all these things. So let's just review the basics. On a regular weekday, we have 21. Okay, I'm not going to go over that. All right, that's the first case in the Mishnah. And then on Friday, we're always going to add 6. What are the 6? So first you have 3 at different times to tell people to stop doing melacha, come back from the fields, close your store, put your food, insulate your food properly. And then on Friday afternoon, you have 3 more, lehavdil ben kodesh lechol. That's also on Friday to say, that's it, this is the final blast. Not on Mosei Shabbat. I said the wrong thing yesterday. Even though it says ben kodesh lechol, it means ben chol lekodesh. So Friday, any Friday gets extra 6 to announce Shabbat is coming. And then you have the long case. Erev Shabbat shebetoch echag hayu sham 48. When you have Friday Chol HaMoed, we're going to see in our calendar, every year we have a Friday Chol HaMoed. We'll explain why. And that's going to be 48. 3 to open the gates. That's in the morning. Every morning when you open the gates, there's 3. Except maybe on Shabbat. We'll talk about that too. And then as the 2 Kohanim are marching out to go get the water, 3 at the upper gate, 3 at the lower gate, and 3 to draw the water. Now, what's missing in this Mishnah is 3 on the 10th step. The previous Mishnah mentioned that they blow the trumpets on the 10th stair, and here it's missing. Okay, that's going to be our first question today. What's going on? How come the previous Mishnah said that there is those, and this Mishnah, which is counting 48, skips it? And if you add those in, then you're going to have more than 48. Okay, so 3 when we draw the water, 3 when we pour the water on the Mizbeach, 9 for the Tamid Shel Shachar, 9 for Tamid Shel Ba'arbaim, 9 for Musafin. Any Korban is going to have 9 because you stop at 3 places while they were singing. And then also the 3, because it's Friday, another 6 to announce that Shabbat is coming. Okay, so that's the case of the Mishnah, which is Friday, Chol HaMoed. And now we begin. Erev Shabbat shebetoch echag. Ve'idu lema'ala asirit lo katane. This Mishnah that we just read that counted 48 didn't mention that we blow also on the 10th step. It just said the upper gate and the lower gate. The previous Mishnah said we do blow the trumpets there. So the answer is matnitin maneh lebi Eliezer ben Yaakov hi detanya. Shalosh lema'ala asirit lebi Eliezer ben Yaakov shalosh al gabe hamizbeach. It's actually a machloket. The Tanakama says we blow 9, 3 blasts on the 10th step, and Rabbi ben Yaakov says no, we don't blow them on the steps, but rather the 3 on the when we're pouring on the mizbeach, that's where it is. And how one says this doesn't say that. Haomer lema'ala asirit eno omer al gabe mizbeach. Haomer al gabe mizbeach eno omer lema'ala asirit. All right, the one that says we do it on the 10th step, that's Tanakama, doesn't think that we do it when we're pouring on Mizbeach. And the one, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, remember his name because he's going to come up a few times today. He disagrees with the other and says we don't blow it on the 10th stair. So therefore, you can interchange them. It's one or the other. What's the reason for both of them? My tamad Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, kevan detaka leptichat she'arim lema'ala asirit lamali detaka haylav sha'adhu. So since you blew the trumpets when you were opening the gates, so why do you need to do it on the 10th step also? It's not even a gate. So when you go through the upper gate, the lower gate, the 10th step is just in the middle of nowhere. What's the point of blowing at that over there? So therefore, he says no, better to do it when you're actually pouring the water on the mizbeach. Some say that this would also include the willows that you put, right, would be around at the same time. So that's a nicer place to blow the trumpets.
Rabbanan sabre, kevan detakal meloi hamayim al gabe mizbeach lamali, hilkach lamasirit adif. The rabbis say, well, we already blew trumpets for drawing the water. So now we're just taking the same water and putting mizbeach. So in the extra one, we blew for the water already. And so therefore they think that when you're on the steps, this is nice. You're coming down and everybody sees. It'll be very celebratory. So they prefer the 10th step. Okay, but you have one or the other. You end up with the same number. So it doesn't really matter. Okay. Ki ata Rabbi Acha bar Chanina midaroma, aiti matnita biyadeh. When Rabbi Acha came from the south, he lived in the south in Judea, and he brought with him a gift, a baraita, right? When the rabbis come and visit each other, right, they don't need a box of chocolates. He comes and he knew a baraita that the rabbis in the north didn't know, so he taught them the baraita. It says as follows: this is again back in Bemidbar, 10th chapter in Ba'alotecha, all the laws of the Chatzotzrot. It has a general statement. That the Kohanim will blow the trumpets, and this will be an everlasting institution. So it's nothing specific about this. Is like a more of a title. So she'en tamud lomar yitkeu, shekevan nemar utkatem b'chasosrot alolotechem v'alzibchem shalmechem. Umat tamud lomar yitkeu. Really, I don't need this pasuk. Why do I have to tell me that the Kohanim are going to blow the shofar? It's going to say in two more pasukim that for all the holidays, for the olah, for all the korbanot, they blow the trumpets. So I know that they're going to blow the trumpets. Why do I need pasuk 8? And the answer is it's according to the number of musafin. That statement is a little hard to understand. So hu tanela v'hu amarla. Rabbi Acha, he not only brought the tradition, he also explained it. These are technical terms, taneh and amar. A tanah is a professional memorizer, right? He's an Amorah, but he knew it's an Amorah that knows all the Tannaitic literature by heart, the walking book. So he is not only the source of this baraita, he also Amar. Amar means to explain, right? Amoraim are called that because they explain the Tannaitic sources. So he's not only the Tana, he is also the Amorah that's going to explicate it. Lomar shetokin al kol musaf umusaf, and the chidush here is that you do separate trumpet blasts for every musaf. So if it's a day when you have two musafin, like Shabbat and a holiday, and one of the days of Sukkot, so then you would blow 9 plus 9, right? And if you have 3 musafin on a day, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh, right, and Shabbat, then you would blow 27 just for that day. So that's a chidush. Not everybody agrees that you would have so many. The other opinion would say, no, you just do 9 no matter how many musafin there are. All right, now that we know this, you see that we're going to have some questions because there's a way to get a lot more than 48. So here's the question. Tenan, our Mishnah that we started off with said, Erev Shabbat shebetoch Chag hayu sham 48. So Friday, Chol HaMoed, 48. V'im ita, and if it's true what you just said, Rabbi Acha, then litni Shabbat shebetoch Chag mashkachat la 50 v'chag. Then why don't you tell me a bigger chidush, even more? If you have Shabbat Chol HaMoed, so that means that you're adding another 9 for Musaf. Now, the example the Mishnah brought was Friday, where you have 6 to announce Shabbat's coming. So take away those 6, but now it's Shabbat. So you're going to add another 9 for the Musaf. So you'll end up with, instead of 48, 51. And so now you have even more. So now we have a problem, right, with Rabbi Acha. It doesn't fit with the Mishnah. Answer, Amar Rabbi Zera, lefi she'en tok'ain liftichat she'arim b'Shabbat. Oh, on Shabbat, we don't do the first blowing in the morning when we open the gates because that's not really so important. And we're not going to override Shabbat just to announce that we open the gates. We will override Shabbat when you have to, it's for a korban. That's necessary. You have to do it, part of the korban, but it's not necessary to announce the opening the gates. So we never do it on Shabbat according to this opinion, and that brings it down back to 48. So everything evens out.
So the 48 is for the Erev Shabbat, and here it's on Shabbat.
Right.
Is it 48 for both points?
So, but now it's 48 for, now that we adjusted everything, it's 48 for both. It's 48 on Erev Shabbat because you have 6 that you're announcing Shabbat. It's also 48 on Shabbat because even though you don't have those 6, you add 9 because of Musaf on Shabbat, but you take away 3 because you're not doing the opening of the gates in the morning. Amar Rava, manha de la hash lekimcha. This is a strong dig. Rava said, who is this person who doesn't care about his flour? This is like a baker that is, instead of using fine flour, he mixes coarse flour with fine flour, and he gets an inferior product. He's calling the bizera, someone who is not careful about his teachings. He says good things, but he mixes in. He's mixed up. And he's saying statements that are coarse and not refined in his teaching. Okay, this is you don't want to get on Rava's bad side here. So why? What's his problem with the bizera? Our Mishnah said every day you do the basic 27, and three of those are opening the gates. So Mishnah says every day. Doesn't say excluding Shabbat. So now you're just introducing something that does not in the language of the Mishnah. ועוד, אינם כהדדין הוא, לתני שבת שבתוך החג, היו שם 48, דשמעת מינה תרתי. And if you're right, that you take away those 3 of the morning, and Shabbat Chol HaMoed is the same as Friday Chol HaMoed, and they're both 48, then the Mishnah should have used Shabbat Chol HaMoed as an example, instead of Friday Chol HaMoed as an example. It's going to bring one example, but bring a better one. And why is this a better one? Because I could learn 2 halachot from it. Shema minat Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. I could first of all learn the halacha of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who said that we do the trumpets during the pouring on the mizbeach and not on the 10th step. I will learn that just from the enumeration, like we did, and so everyone agrees with that. So I will learn that anyway. Ushmat minat Rabbi Acha ben Bar Chanina. And if you tell me the example of Shabbat Chol HaMoed, I would also learn this baraita that Rabbi Acha brought from the south, that you bring another 9 for every musaf offering. And so that would be a better example because it would give us 2 chidushim instead of the example of the Mishnah that brings us only 1 chidush. And so that's a problem for the bi'acha. If the Mishnah doesn't give that case, it means that it's not correct. Okay. So that's why Rava doesn't like that answer for the bizera. He's going to give his own answer. This is really makes a lot of sense. Remember, on Shabbat we do nisuch hamayim, we do pour the water on the mizbech, but we don't go out to collect it. So you wouldn't blow the trumpets when you're collecting it, and you also wouldn't for the procession outside the gates because you're not doing the whole procession. So actually you're going to take away a lot of blasts on Shabbat, Chol HaMoed. And so therefore, that's why it's not a good example. You actually end up with much less than 48. Okay, good. So now everybody's happy. The Mishnah gave one example, that's 48. And we knocked out the one that's Shabbat Chol HaMoed. What we're going to do now is introduce a couple of other examples that do add up to 48 and wonder why the Mishnah didn't mention those.
Is it specific according to Rabbanan that we said earlier that the Rabbanan blow for Milui Mayim as opposed to Eliezer ben Yaakov?
No, sounds like on Shabbat no one would. No one thinks that you go out and draw water on Shabbat, so you wouldn't have to blow them.
But only for Rabbanan you would blow on the drawing.
Right, but but also the procession going outside the gates, you don't do that either on Shabbat. You don't leave the gates. Good. So you actually take away a lot. Okay, so now here's our question. Here's another one where we can get 48. And the Mishnah should have mentioned this example. Rosh Hashanah shechal liyot b'Shabbat. Daha'ika telata musafin. Musaf de Rosh Hashanah, musaf de Rosh Chodesh, musaf de Shabbat. So when Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat, which it can be, right? It happens even in our calendar. So you have 3 musafin. And when we follow the bi'acha, each of musaf needs 9. So that's 9 times 3 is 27. And a regular plain old day gets 21. So 21 plus 27, 48. So here's another example of 48. How come you didn't list that in the Mishnah? If the bi'acha is correct, that you bring another 9 for every musaf. So No. Erev Shabbat shebetoch echag isterich le lashmini inan kederbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. No, we brought this example of Friday Chol HaMoed because we wanted to teach the chidush of the Eliezer ben Yaakov that you blow for the drawing of the water and not on the steps. That's why we brought that example and not Rosh Hashanah. But really, you're right. Rosh Hashanah is a good example. So no, now you didn't understand my question. Atu mika amar litniha vela litniha. My question was not why you should mention this one and not that one. Litniha velitniha. List both of them. I understand you need Friday Chol HaMoed to teach you that chidush. But my question is, why don't you also talk about Rosh Hashanah, that's Shabbat, because that's also 48. So the answer to that is Tana v'shiyer. My shiyer, the high shiyer. So the Tana, he gave one example and he omitted other examples. Now here's a general rule about the Mishnah. If you have 3 or more examples of something, the Mishnah is not going to list every one, right? You calculate it yourself. And so it might, then in that case, when you have a lot of examples, the Mishnah will mention one, and then you figure out the rest of them. But if there are only 2 examples of something, then the Mishnah should mention both of them, right? You only say etc. if you have more than one that you're going to leave out for conciseness, okay? But if there's only 2, you should mention both. So now we have 2 cases, and we're trying to say the Mishnah mentioned only one because it didn't want to mention everything. In order for that to be valid, we need at least 3 cases where you have 48. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to say, what other case did the Mishnah leave out that would also be 48? So the answer is, She'er Erev Pesach, the 14th of Nisan. What happens on that day? That's when everybody brings their Korban Pesach. And if you remember back from Pesachim, we have 3 shifts. And within each shift, they would say Hallel 3 times. And so when you say Hallel, you blow 3 blasts, so that's 3 times 3 each shift. That's 9 each shift, and 3 shifts, that's 27. So a regular day is 21 plus 27 for all the times you say Hallel on the 14th of Nisan, and that's 48. So now it's good. Now we have Rosh Hashanah and Erev Pesach, where we have 48, and the Mishnah is not going to mention every single example, so we'll left those out. All right, so now we're good, but we're going to question this. Imishum Erev Pesach, lav shiurehu, dahamane Rabbi Yehudahi, da'amar, mimehem shel kat shelishit, lo mimehem shel kat shelishit, lo higia lomar ahabti ki yishma Hashem, mepnei shehayu amaha mu'atin. He said that the 3rd group never finished Hallel. They didn't have to say it 3 times. Even right, they didn't get to say the whole cycle of Hallel because most people were zidizim. They wanted to be in one of the first 2 shifts. So the 3rd shift didn't have so many people, so they finished them quickly. So you see that they really never did all 27 blasts for those 9 recitations of Hallel. They said Hallel 7 times. Not 9 times, and therefore that's not a good example. So now we're left with only 2 examples of 48, so you should have mentioned both of them. Okay, so that, and Rabbi Yehuda happened to mention that. Now we say, wait, that's Rabbi Yehuda. How kimna de la Rabbi Yehuda? On yesterday's daf, we said that our Mishnah is not Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that counted 7 and 16, the minimum 7, maximum 16, because he counted a unit of 3 as 1. And our Mishnah, we said, doesn't follow his way of counting. So therefore, we have to forget, we don't have to take into account the Rabbi Yehuda here, who said that they never finished the 3rd Hallel, the 3rd round. Now this Tana, even if it's not Rabbi Yehuda himself, he might disagree with Rabbi Yehuda in one thing, in the sense of how to count the blasts, but he might agree with Rabbi Yehuda regarding this, that they never finished the 3rd thing. Rabbi Yehuda here is it looks like he's giving a historical account. They never had to do all 3 Hallels in the 3rd round. So therefore, he probably does agree with this one, and therefore that's not a good example. Erev Pesach is not a good example of 48. They never got up to 48. So now we're still looking for a 3rd place where you have 48 in order that we can apply the rule that he said this. He said only one example, and he didn't bring the other 2. Ela my shier, dehai shier erev haPesach shechal liyot be'erev Shabbat, apek shit be'ayel shit. So if you have erev Pesach, so the 14th of Nisan, and on a Friday, In that case, you're adding Hallel 3, 6, 7 times. That's 21, right? Plus it's Erev Shabbat. So you have to add 6 to announce that Shabbat is coming. That's 27. 27 plus the 21 of a regular day, 48. So there you go. We do have yet another source, even according to the Yehuda, that says that you didn't finish the third round. Okay, good. Since we have 3, the Mishnah is not going to mention all 3 examples. I mention only one example, just so that you know how to, just to see a sample case. But you're right, the other cases would also be good.
This implies that Erev Hag doesn't have the same perception of Tekiyot like Erev Shabbat. You don't do the Ben Kodesh Lahal and all those.
Erev Chag, yes, you do.
No, because here we have to make it specifically Erev Shabbat and Erev Hag.
Oh, you mean if it was only Erev Yom Tov, then you wouldn't do those things. Yeah, interesting. That's a good point. Very nice. Well, because some of them have to do with cooking. That's it. Stop cooking. And you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. Maybe that's why. Okay. Then mosifin al arba'im ushmone. Now, there's never a case that you have more than 48 trumpet blasts. Velo, is that true? Va'ika erev haPesach shechal liyot b'Shabbat. If when the 14th of Nisan falls out on Shabbat. So now you're going to have the Musaf of Shabbat, plus everyone's bringing their Korban Pesach, because you do, right? You slaughter Korban Pesach even on Shabbat. De'i l'Rabbi Yehuda hamishin v'chada, Rabbanan chamshin v'sheba. If you follow the Yehuda, where you have only 7 rounds of Hallel, that's 21, plus 9 for the Musaf, that's 30. 30 plus the 21 of a regular day is 51. And if you're according to the Rabbanan that they did finish all the rounds of Hallel, then you have 6 more. That's 57. So either way, you have more than 48. Okay. Ki katane mide deite bechol shana. Erev Pesach shaliot b'shana delete bechol shana v'shana la ketane. When the Mishnah is going to, he says, you're right. That day would be 51 or 57. But when the Mishnah wants to give a sample case, it wants to give a case that happens every year. Every year you see this happen. Whereas Shabbat falling out, 14th falling out on Shabbat, happens only once in a blue moon. In fact, it looks like that didn't happen for many decades. Remember the story about Hillel, and no one knew what to do, right? They tried to avoid such a case. So therefore, that's a rare case. We want to bring a regular case that happens every single year. So that's why we brought the example of Friday Chol HaMoed. Okay, now we're going to discuss, is there always a Friday Chol HaMoed Sukkot? Atu Erev Shabbat shebetoch Chag mi ite bechol shana. Is that true that there's always a Friday that's Chol HaMoed? Zimnim de la mashkachat le ve'echi dameh kegon shechal yom tov rishon be'erev Shabbat. How could you have a case where there's no Friday during Chol HaMoed? Well, when the first day of Sukkot, the Yom Tov, is Friday, right? In that case, so you have Yom Tov is Friday, and then the next 6 days are not Friday. So all the days of Chol HaMoed are not Fridays. And so you can have 1 out of 7 years randomly that would happen. And therefore, even the Mishnah's example is not an example that happens every year. So then you just went against your rule that we only pick an example that happens every single year. Okay, now this following is going to be really important for understanding our calendar even today. Ki makle'inan yom tov rishon be'erev Shabbat madche dachinan le. No, if you ever see that the first day of Yom Tov is going to be on Friday, we push the calendar off and we add an extra day to Elul. Elul is usually 29 days, but if we see that it's going to happen this way, we add an extra day to Elul to push Yom Tov from Friday to Saturday. We do this every year. Why? Anytime that happens. My ta'ama, kevan de'ikla Yom Tov harishon shel chag liot be'erev Shabbat, Yom HaKippurim emat haveh bechad b'Shabbat. If the Yom Tov Rishon is going to be on Friday, that's the 15th of Tishrei on Friday, then Yom Kippur, the 10th of Tishrei, will be 5 days before, which will be Sunday. And we have a rule, you cannot have Yom Kippur be on Sunday or on Friday. You can't have Yom Kippur and Shabbat back to back. Hilkach tachenaneh, and therefore we push it. Now this is true today. Why is this true? Why can't you have Shabbat and Yom Kippur adjacent to each other? Two reasons. Number one, if someone dies, then we don't bury on Shabbat or Yom Kippur. We won't be able to bury the person for 2 days. And that's not respectful. And so therefore, we have to have a day in between. The second reason is because of food preparation. Before refrigerators, how are you going to have food? If you have Yom Kippur on Friday, then how are you going to break the fast? You can't do any work. You can't do any cooking, and you can't keep anything in the fridge. How are you going to eat on Shabbat? And the same thing after. You can't cook on Shabbat. How are you going to have a meal after Yom Kippur? Right? So therefore, it's not practical to have those days back to back. And so we set up the whole calendar to make sure that this does not happen. This is the principle, Lo Adu Rosh. Rosh Hashanah can never fall out on Sunday. That's the Hoshana Rabbah reason that we saw some days ago. And it can never fall out on Wednesday or on Friday, Dalit and Vav. So there you go, Vav, the Vav of Lo Adu, that's what we're talking about now. And Rosh Hashanah is always the same day as the first day of Sukkot, right? Because it's 2 weeks apart. And so therefore, just like you can never have Rosh Hashanah on a Friday, you can never have Sukkot, first day of Sukkot on a Friday. So in fact, since that never happens, so that means there's always a Friday Chol HaMoed. Good. And therefore, the example of Mishnah occurs every year. Okay, so that's fantastic. Now, this is all assuming that we had the system in place, right? Now, when did the system start, the Lo Adu Rosh? Was it always like that, right? Or was this put in place at some point? What about the time when there were witnesses that just came? And it depended on empirical evidence. So if a witness happened to come, and that's when they said the Kiddush HaChodesh is, then we'd have to listen to them, right? So if you remember in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, you have all those stories about Rabban Gamliel accepted the witnesses, even though they looked like they were lying, right? And the Rabbi Yoshua said, "No, what are you talking about? That's not true." It could be that Rabban Gamliel was accepting witnesses or not in order to adjust the calendar by a day in order to because of these considerations, right? That might be behind some of those stories. Okay, so now we're going to see, so all that was based on if you set the calendar to make sure that Yom Kippur is never on Sunday, then you'll never have the first day of Sukkot be on Friday. And then you will always have a Friday Chol HaMoed, and that's why the Mishnah gave that example. But now we're going to quote two sources that indicate that Yom Kippur can be on a Friday or a Sunday. Do we really always push off Rosh Hashanah by a day in order to avoid Yom Kippur being on Sunday? We have a Mishnah that says, well, if you have sacrifices on Shabbat and you have leftover and you have to burn at night, usually you burn it the next night, you can burn it even on Yom Kippur. That means Yom Kippur is Saturday night, Sunday, and since Yom Kippur is a lower level Kiddusha than Shabbat, you're allowed to burn the sacrifices of Shabbat even on Yom Kippur. So there you go. That could happen. Obviously, if we're talking about this halacha, that Sunday is Yom Kippur. A second source, when we went to visit Rav in Bavel and we were studying with him, he said the following. Rabbi Zera from Eretz Yisrael, he went to visit Rav. Ha de Tanya, Yom Kippurim shechal liyot erev Shabbat lo hayu tok'im, u'b'motzei Shabbat lo hayu mavdilin divrei hakol hi. So he used to teach us that a braita that taught when Yom Kippur is on Friday, you don't blow the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur. Right, end of Yom Kippur we blow shofar, but then that's Shabbat already started, so you're not allowed to blow the shofar. So we don't blow shofar at all. And Motzei Shabbat, if Yom Kippur comes right after Shabbat, you don't say Havdalah, and everyone agrees with this. So there you go, another braita that Yom Kippur can be on Sunday. And Kiseliki Tatam Ashkachte Rabbi Yehuda Bered Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi Deyate Vekama Rabbi Akiva Hi. It was part of the same story. When we left there, we found another rabbi who said not everybody agrees to that, only Rabbi Akiva agrees to this. And in any case, the point is that both of these, this Mishnah and this Braita, say that Yom Kippur can be on Sunday. And if Yom Kippur is on Sunday, then first day of Sukkot will be on Friday. And then there won't be a Friday Chol HaMoed. And then you won't have an example that occurs every year. And then why did you pick that example? You could have picked one of the other, you could have picked the other example. and the other example is 51 or 57, and then you'd have to change the whole Mishnah. Okay, you have to review this link. Okay, but we have an answer. La kashya harabanan ha'acherim hi. There are actually two different opinions about if the calendar is set all the time. That's the opinion of Rabbanan, that you always make sure that Yom Kippur is not on Sunday. And there's Acherim, there's another opinion that says, no, it falls out whenever it falls out, and it could be on Sunday. So our Mishnah that we started today with, that follows Rabbanan, that we do the rule, Lo Adu Rosh, and we're going to push off Rosh Hashanah if it ever falls out on Friday. But there is other opinion, and here's the other opinion. We'll end with this. The Tanya, Acherim Omerim, and Ben Aseret La Aseret, Ben Rosh Hashanah LeRosh Hashanah Ela Arba'a Yamim Bilvad. V'im Hayta Shana Me'obedet Hamisha. If you take any Shavuot this year or any Rosh Hashanah this year, and you want to know what day of the week that Shavuot or Rosh Hashanah will fall out next year, all you have to do is add 4 weekdays. If Shavuot was Sunday last year, then just add 4 more days. You get to Wednesday, it'll be Wednesday in the coming year. Why does that make sense? Because a lunar calendar is 354 days. That's not divisible by 7. 350 is divisible by 7. It leaves a remainder of 4. Which means, right? So if it was Sunday, then the next year is going to be 4 days added to the weekdays, and then the next year after that, if it was Wednesday, add 4 more days, and it's going to right, and so it will go around the cycle automatically. So this is said in the name of Acherim. You see, Acherim don't take anything else into account. It's always going to be 4 days, and there's therefore no possibility that you can add another day for Elul. Now he does. There is one exception. Shana Me'obedet. When you add an extra Adar, right? Adar Sheni, then that's going to be 29 days, which 28 is divisible by 7. That adds 1 more. So if it's Shana Me'obedet, and last year Shavuot was Sunday, now next year will be on Thursday, right? But that's the only exception he allows for, and not for pushing off Rosh Hashanah 1 day. So therefore, according to Acherim, you have a fixed amount, and you always follow it no matter what, and you don't account for Lo Adu Rosh. But according to Rabbanan, you do account for Adu Rosh, and once you do that, then our Mishnah makes sense. It is in fact one of 3 cases where you have 48, and since there's 3 cases, we don't have to mention all of them. We can mention only 1. It's true, there's cases where you have even more, but those cases happen rarely, and we brought the case that happens every year. Okay, so through this whole system, we're able to understand a lot about our calendar today as well, which is really important to do. And I think what we see, even though here it says it's machloket, probably this is a development that happened with time, that Rabban Gamliel, would make these adjustments to make sure, and then eventually when they moved from an empirical witness-based calendar to a fixed calendar, then they set these rules in. So really the Tanakh, Mishnah, and Baraita are earlier sources, and the Lo Adu Rosh comes from later times when everything is more fixed. Baruch Adonai L'olam, amen ve'amen.